production business. And what Dave Aranda has done now is Blake Shapen is the man. He now has the rest of the spring and summer to develop relationships as the quarterback, as QB1 with the wide receivers, and that's a very young group. And I wish Gary Bohannon the best of luck, and I hope he gets another opportunity if he does. And he could also turn out to be even more of an amazing teammate if he does decide to come back, which I would think he won't, and say, okay, you know what, I'm still a hit away from being the starting quarterback, because we've seen that happen. Both of those guys were hurt last year. I don't know if Dave Aranda has made the right decision. I know a lot of people have acted as they know, but it does appear, based on what we saw when Blake played at the end of last year and what we saw Saturday, even a small portion, that he does seem to be the one that is the one with the highest ceiling moving forward.
That's a good way. Jack actually had – Gary probably has the lower floor in that, but he also has the lowest ceiling, or higher floor and lower ceiling. But I think we've seen what Gary – the offense is with Gary Bohannon. Like, that's what it is. With Blake Shapen, it can be a lot more. Now, will it be that's on Blake Shapen? That's on Jeff Grimes and Sean Bell to make sure that it's more, but he gives you more options to do more things. And if this team is going to take a step forward and defend that Big 12 title, that's probably where they need to go. And I always thought personally that Blake Shapen was the far better quarterback. I just thought he was a lot better. It's not a knock on Gary, but you can do a lot of things with Blake Shapen that you just can't do, and he showed that when he played last year. They were confident on the first play of the game to put him in when Gary pulled his hamstring to throw a pass. Now, a lot of times you put the backup quarterback in for a play and go, all right, look, we're going to get out of this drive right here, hand it off, and do that. But no, they did what they were going to do. So clearly Jeff Grimes had a lot of confidence in him then. Dave Aranda has a lot of confidence in him. I think it's, and this is not for sure, but I think you can make an assumption that they at least feel a little bit better after spring about the guys behind Blake Shapen that aren't Gary Bohannon now than they did before, if they're making a decision knowing they're going to lose one of the guys.
Yeah, Kyron Drones, who's a scholarship player from Shadow Creek, and C.J. Rogers, the walk-on from Argyle, who was good in that game on Saturday, and a guy that seems to have picked up the system very well.
Yeah, I think it says a lot about what they think about this team, because I do think the easiest thing to do would have been to just name Gary the starter and keep everything as is, not disrupt or ruffle any feathers. But I do think you would have limited yourself. I think if you were trying to be the absolute best team that you can be, as explosive as you can possibly be on offense, then Blake Shapen was the call. I do worry about his size and, the injury part. But then again, Gary got injured last year and missed, like an entire month. And he's a much bigger target. He, pulls his hamstring. So you can't pick somebody just for the sake of avoiding injury. But I think all things equal, both players healthy. Blake Shapen gives you more of a high-powered offense with his arm. Gary on Saturday made a throw in particular near the goal line that was picked off and ran back for a 90-yard pick six, and it was like I can't think of the word, not PTSD, but it kind of felt like, you know what I mean, from last year. Of just
deja vu?
Deja vu of just like, oh, not that kind of a throw. Just there was little throws he'd make at times that are just disastrous. And I think especially in looking back at the quarterbacks in a couple pieces that I wrote over the spring, looking at the numbers and kind of what both guys did. Obviously, Gary had a lot more playing time, but, he went through the first few games of the year without throwing a pick. And I think we all know that was kind of it was a true stat, but it was kind of a shaky stat because there were definitely some picks he should have thrown that just were dropped or whatever. But then if you look at the second half of the year, look at his interception totals. They started piling up. Like one a game at least, if not a couple a game, and that continued all the way throughout the end of the year. And so when those turnovers started picking up and just some of that confidence got shaky throwing the ball, and then what we saw in the Ole Miss game where he was clearly not fully healthy, but it still wasn't that far off maybe from some other throwing performances we saw. So I think, if you're trying to get a high-attack passing game, some accuracy, a little oomph with it, then I think Blake Shapen's the call. Now, it does make me wonder about the running game, and what they think there, because Gary obviously brought an element to their run game. So I'm very curious, just kind of, in their decision making, ultimately what led them to Shapen over Bohannon, strengths versus weaknesses and things like that.
I've heard that because Gary is a runner and a really good one, although he also was a very good thrower for the most part. Let's not forget they got themselves in position because of what he was at quarterback. But the defense, just like the 2019 team, carried everything along with special teams. Now,
there's been some crazy reactions. I understand that people are going to be extreme. I saw somebody last night, though, that was talking about, well, they wouldn't have been in this Big 12 championship without Gary Bohannon. And look, I will agree to some extent, but I also think that's BS. Like, they got there because of their defense, and they got there because of their run game more than anything else. The quarterbacks played a role, but that was not why they were in the Big 12 championship
He was
game.
the best quarterback for them last year, and this year, now the coaching staff feels like it's Blake Shapen, and who knows what the future holds. One of the other things about the running game, because you look at it because of what Gary can do as a threat running the football and what a defense has to make sure they know where he is too. At the same time, when you can throw the ball, now it's not like Gary could not throw the deep ball. Tyquan Thornton had a fantastic year. But if you can throw the ball better, then you also can run the ball better. Now that also, am I right? We forget the run sets up the pass. The pass can also set up the run. And I've seen throughout the last 20 hours or so about that Blake Shapen needs to bulk up. We've seen big, thick quarterbacks go down. We've seen guys that are wiry that get hit and turn around like pretzels that never do. It's really kind of one of those things. Now, Blake knows that. He also knows he has to be more physical as far as maybe in the weight room or do that. And then again, there's been some guys that are really, really good. Drew Brees was not a physical specimen. I'm not trying to compare Blake Shapen, but I'm talking about he played forever. Like forever. And eventually the body, you could,
If he was made of glass, they would have gone with Gary.
They would have gone with Gary Bohannon. And then also, Kyron Drones has to get better. And he showed improvement with what we saw, but he still has to get better. And C.J. Rogers, we can say what we want, and a lot of you have. C.J. Rogers is a part of this decision because, again, you don't know if that's the answer, then you may not want to know the question. That's just fair. Not against C.J. That's with anybody in that position or whatever college program we're talking about. But there's something about him.